I want to welcome everyone to No Nonsense Nonprofits. Hi, I'm Sandy Ray, founder of Sandra E. Ray CPA, where we alleviate financial headaches so that you can create a bigger impact. Today, we're talking about the significance of data security in our nonprofit organizations. Data security is necessary in our life today. It's all around us. It's not just a for-profit concern, it's a nonprofit concern. And I could argue, quite frankly, that in some cases we have more data that needs to be protected as nonprofit organizations. We handle sensitive donor information. We have financial records of people. We have personal data for people. And this all makes us a potential target for cyber threats. I want to first talk about what are the cyber threats. I think for most of us, this is going to be a real basic overview, but I just want to make sure that we have an understanding of what we're talking about. We have data that is unique and sometimes unique to our organizations. We have donor information. We have donor names, addresses, and their payment details. For our beneficiaries and our volunteers and our employees, we have personal identification information, such as social security numbers and dates of birth. We may have health records, and we have other demographic information that bad actors could use. In addition to that, we have financial data. In some cases, we may request copies of tax forms. There may be information in our grants that is private or personal or confidential. And of course, our accounting records. We don't want any loss or errors in our accounting records. So that's the kind of data that we have. How is that data at risk, and what are the threats to that data? And again, we're going to go over some basic stuff, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and understanding what all the threats are. First of all, phishing attacks, where employees and volunteers are targeted through deceptive emails or texts to click on something or go to a link or provide information. Sometimes it's even like, send me an ACH and here's the information, or go out and send me gift cards for whatever reason, pretending to be someone that they're not. Another thing that we're all aware of is ransomware, and that is where our files are locked down until we make a payment that will release those files. And then, of course, we have data breaches. Those are unauthorized access to sensitive information. We have one thing we don't think about is lack of security or controls by our vendors. Maybe we're sharing information or we're relying on information from vendors within our systems. How does that affect our systems? And then, of course, artificial intelligence has made all this easier for bad actors to look more legitimate and harder to determine if this is a bad actor or a legitimate request. I received an email the other day from someone who said, okay, for one of our clients, the rent remittance information is changing. And so I went back to our prior records and I called my contact person and I said, is this legit? Are you changing your banking information and your remittance address? And he said, yes, and thank you for calling. So people understand that this is out there and we have to take those extra steps. If we have poor data security and we are subject to one of these threats, what are the consequences of those actions? First and foremost is loss of donor trust. That's our income stream, whether it be from grants or individual donors or corporations. We don't want to lose our income stream. There are legal and financial repercussions, and this is on the expense side. We're going to end up paying out for possibly fines for failing to comply with regulations. And I'm talking about like HIPAA, the Healthcare Information Portability and Accountability Act. We're not allowed to share medical information. And if we have that, a breach is a violation of that. Additionally, there are 7 states that have enacted protection and privacy laws with regards to data. The most popular or the most well-known is the California Cyber Protection Act. And I think a lot of the states either have adopted that or use that as the basis for their laws. And then because we're on the internet and we're international, there is general data protection regulations. And this is from the European Union. Not only do we have to think about US based, but if we're getting funds from international donations, we have to follow those regulations as well. And then, of course, finally, there could be lawsuits from individuals. There's remediation costs. Many times, if there's a data breach, we have agreed to pay for credit monitoring for those whose data was breached, which I think is fair, but that's a cost related to that breach that we had not maybe budgeted for or anticipated. And so those are just some of the consequences of having our data breached or accessed by a bad actor. And that's just the financial. As we all know, loss of data can cripple our operations and our program delivery. Just back in July, look at all the US flights being grounded because of the technical issues with the update to the FAA system. It wasn't safe for people to fly. So just a simple update can cripple our entire US transportation system. It's crazy, but it happens. So those are the things, the consequences of what can happen if we have a data breach or an attack or loss of our secure data. So what are the things that we want to do and to put into place to help us secure that data, make sure that our financials are safe and that we really are giving out accurate financial data and keeping everyone else's financial data safe? First of all, implementing strong passwords. Encourage our users to have complex passwords. Make sure that they update them regularly and use a secure method of storing those passwords. We all have so many passwords. We need a way to keep track of them. And having passwords on your phone or having passwords in an Excel document, that it doesn't work anymore. Generally, you're going to have a software or other application to keep all those passwords safe. Another thing that we want to do as part of our best practices is to train our staff on a regular basis. Make sure that employees can recognize phishing attempts and other cyber threats. And like I said, these attempts are getting better. So we really do need to train our staff just to be very wary of what's going on. We want to use encryption. Encryption secures our data either as it is in transit or at rest. So that kind of like codes the information. You have to have the encryption key. So using encryption is another layer of protection for our data. And speaking of layers of protection, we want to talk about access to the data. We want to restrict access to sensitive information to only those who need it. We're talking about role-based access. If your job does not entail you or does not require you to have access to donor credit card information, then you should not have access to donor credit card information. Another access factor would be multi-factor authentication. There are several ways to do that. There's authenticators, there's texting, there's all kinds of things that we can do to set up multi-factor authentication. Another method of securing our access is using secure devices and networks. I'm talking about firewalls and securing your Wi-Fi and making sure that you're doing those software updates on a regular basis, the legitimate software updates on a regular basis. Those a lot of time have fixes for holes in the security of the software. And so you want to keep that software updated. And we want to log who is accessing our data, and we want to monitor that on a fairly regular basis. You want to make sure that you recognize all the people that are accessing that data. If you don't, there could be a potential problem. And then finally, I want to talk about backing up our data. Backups help us recover from loss of data, from these threats, from ransomware, those kinds of things. So we need to make sure that our backups are reliable and that we're testing those restore processes, because that is the way we are going to recover from any cyber incident when it occurs. And quite honestly, it's becoming when and not if. So those backups are extremely important. To wrap things up, really protecting our data is of paramount importance to our operations, our financial stability, the trust that we have out there with the community and our donors, and avoiding any kind of legal penalties or fines for violating regulations. I want to encourage you to review your organization's data security practices. Take the necessary steps to improve them, and then do this on a regular basis. I would say at least annually, but the way technology changes, that's probably too long. Be proactive, look at what's going on. Maybe you want a monthly part of your regular staff meeting, devote a little bit of time to updates to security and cyber threats. That's just a great way to keep everybody trained, because as we all know, most cyber threats we bring in ourselves through our employees, our staff, our volunteers, our board members. Maybe we give constituents access to things, but generally we're inviting these in because we're not aware that this cyber threat is really a threat. We think it's a legitimate request. Like I said, it's really important for us to make sure that we're doing all that we can. So I hope this was helpful for you today. And if you have any questions on this or other topics, please put them in the comment section below. And of course, we always appreciate your likes. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Remember, creating a bigger impact starts with stopping the nonsense. If you're dealing with nonsense in your nonprofit organization, we'd love to help you cut through the noise.